Hello and welcome to Global Veg Fest. I'm Katrina Fox, the founder of Vivas, a global community and media brand for vegan women driven by compassion, purpose, and a bit of sparkle. Vivas is delighted to have this opportunity to curate 2 live streams during Global Veg Fest, and the first of those is now today. And the aim is to showcase the voices and talents of vegan women from across the globe. And we've got a couple of wonderful live streams. I'm really excited. If you'd like to find out more about Vivas, you can go to thevivasnetwork.com. So we're kicking off this first Vivas live stream with a really important panel discussion on bridging the gap between racial divides in veganism. The panel's being hosted by the amazing serial entrepreneur, Naijha Wright-Brown, who is the marketing director at the Land of Kush Vegan Soul Bistro in Maryland, USA. And Naijha is also the executive director of the Black Veg Society. And she's joined by an incredible group of amazing vegan women to discuss this really important topic. So without further ado, please welcome Naijha Wright-Brown and the panelists.
Good day, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for Katrina and Vivas for having us. Yes, I'm very excited about this panel, Bridging the Gap Between Racial Divides in Veganism. And if people don't realize or understand that that is a thing, then you're living under a rock. We're definitely in the backyard of the latest allegation at the Vegan Society. So it is a real thing. So today I'm happy to talk with Dr. Layla, Priyanka, Dr. Erin, and Gwenna Hunter. And we're just going to get right into it. Dr. Layla, I understand that you're passionate about food justice and health equity. What are some examples you're seeing?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think one of the things that, which is very obvious and you can see it on the surface is, whenever you go to a website of a famous, well-known, vegan or plant-based organization, and you look at the members, you see the lack of diversity, the lack of, people of color. Having said that, sometimes even if there are actually people of color, it doesn't necessarily mean that the group is diverse because we live in a white hegemonic society. And something that we don't really talk much about is the internalized racism. People of color who have internalized racism, who are actually supporting the white dominance. So, but then again, when you have a health summit, for example, and you see that the topics that are covered are actually the majority or all of them are addressed to the white audience. So
yes. I interviewed someone the other day that's doing a Raw Health Summit, and that's the very thing that we talked about, that the diverse group of speakers was needed because she couldn't find that anywhere else. So that's definitely an important point that you're bringing up, the diversity in speakers and panelists. So thank you for that. Did you want to say anything else before we move on? Priyanka, you are focused on intersectional veganism and climate justice. What are you seeing out there? What's an example?
Yes, absolutely. Firstly, I just wanted to say it's an honor to be here with such amazing women. My name is Priyanka. I'm half Indian, half Ecuadorian. And before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the ancestral land I stand on today of the Narragansett and Wampanoag people of Rhode Island. And I wish to honor and respect the many indigenous people still connected to this land on which we gather across the globe. So when thinking about this panel discussion, there was a few questions that came to mind. Do you think our diets might be colonized?
We know. We know.
That's right? So countries have been colonized or are still colonized, but can cuisine also be colonized? Our Earth has close to 8 billion people, and 3.7 of those people were once or might still be colonized today directly or indirectly. And that means that 2 of 3 people are eating food that has a connection to colonized cuisine. So when I was thinking about colonized diets, a few questions came to mind around the role of media in perpetuating a certain dominant discourse that creates divide, especially in the context of veganism. So I decided to do a quick search to know if the movement that I represent in turn represents me. And I was confronted with hundreds and hundreds of pages that painted a particular narrative of vegans living among ripe fruit, fresh vegetables, eating perfectly dressed salads, basking under sunlight. And I spent several minutes scrolling page by page, and it dawned upon me that there's a very specific trope being curated. And it took me until the bottom of page 3 to see anyone that I could directly identify with or relate to. And as a woman of color and someone who works with women of color, all of whom are vegan activists, it truly saddens me to see that we barely have accurate representation.
But why is that? I mean, we've had there's the seventh day, but there's a number of people, number of groups, stemming out of India also that have started this lifestyle. So why is that? I mean, Dr. Aaron, what are you seeing out there?
Well, first off, yes, thank you. I just want to also thank you for having me. And so what qualifies me to talk about race, right? I'm a woman, right?
Right.
And I can never know the experience of the women, all of you on the panel. And I was born in a small rural town that lacked any racial diversity. In fact, it wasn't until I went to college that I actually really interacted with people of color. And so I, like a lot of white people, really lack any sort of awareness or fluency around conversations about race. For a long time I did, right? And I still am learning. And so, and it's because we feel uncomfortable. And I think that's what we see.
Thank you.
We feel uncomfortable.
Thank you for admitting that.
Well, exactly. But now, as a lifestyle medicine practitioner living in the Chicago area, I believe the gap, especially amongst healthcare practitioners, is that their ideas around behavior change alone is at the crux of disease prevention. We know that Black adults, for example, are more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes, heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, cancer, and these are mostly preventable lifestyle diseases.
But it's intentional too. It's intentional too in the environment.
And that's what I'm getting at. Yes. And what I hear lifestyle medicine practitioners will say, is we'll make better food choices. But this is very short-sighted, right? There's a lack of addressing or even looking at the social determinants of health and the systems and structures that lead to health disparities and health inequity that leads to these diseases, and the racist systems that prevent healthy access to food, access to resources, access to opportunity, right? And it's not just the individual health practitioners, but the organizations that they work for that really need to be held accountable.
Exactly. Thank you for that, Dr. Aaron. Gwenna, we know you're in it with the Vegans of LA, founded that, Vegans for Black Lives Matter, and being a food aid coordinator for vegan outreach. I know you know right front and center what's going on.
Yes. And I wanted to, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, and I wanted to address what Priyanka was saying, how, scrolling down and seeing, like, getting down to the third page and, finding representation then. And usually what happens, what I notice is that in everything, even like with the cannabis industry, what's going on with the psychedelic industry, the white culture typically always gets a very good head start on these things before the main, before everyone else gets to really get into it. Black people right now are more likely to go vegan before anybody else. We are the fastest growing segment now. So hopefully those numbers about the diabetes and stuff, that starts to reverse and starts to change. But yeah, I think one of the issues is because they usually get the information first, they're in it before anyone else. And that's why it's always like, it feels like everything is colonized. And then by the time we're in it, we're like, oh, well, this is the face of it. Because I'm still concerned when I'm usually approached about speaking or being a part of something, I will check the website and I will look to see who's involved and look at the board of directors. And it's still a big issue. It's still a big issue. I see like maybe one Asian person, I'm like, no, I'm sorry, that's not going to cut it. You need to step that up and add
you need to do better.
Yeah, exactly. So we still have a long way to go in this movement.
I can tell you, coming into the vegan lifestyle, I thought it was supposed to be this compassionate lifestyle. When I say compassion, I'm talking about university compassion. And when I came into it and found out about the Black and white vegan infighting and just infighting alone, I said, you know what? I really don't want any parts of this, because I'm going to go practice ahimsa.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, forget all this vegan stuff, because, you know, but then you think racism is racism. So no matter where you go, no matter where you hide, it's going to exist. So how do we bridge the gap? Everyone's not going to like everyone is not going to like everyone, period, end of story. But we have an issue that we're trying to address, and cultures are going to look at things a different way. And there's nothing you can do about it, but we have a shared mission. Dr. Layla, what can we do to bridge the gap? What are some action plans, effective, impactful plans that we can put in place to bridge this gap?
Well, to be honest, it is, we are sitting here, all of us, most of us, kind of people of color discussing this. And I just wonder how many white people are actually watching this. Because at the end of the day,
I hope a lot is Global Veg Fest.
If the white vegans are not actually watching this and are not interested in learning about it, then there is no point. We are going to continue, the status quo. So I think, first of all, we need to have white vegans who recognize the importance of this issue and why this should be actually part of, whatever they are doing, part of their mission statement.
And admit to it like Dr. Aaron did.
Yes.
Exactly. If it makes you uncomfortable, you still need to talk about it.
Exactly. And that's actually one of the points I wanted to mention. First of all, it is going to take time and effort. And I think a lot of vegan organizations, they put a statement, on equity, inclusion, diversity. And it is nice that they have this declaration, but they think it is a one-off thing, It's not. It's an ongoing process. Each time, as I said, we live in a white hegemonic society. So whiteness, the white standards are the norm, and we conform to those norms. So they need to kind of be aware of that. They need to be aware of their unconscious biases. And, a lot of times they think, okay, but if I invest time and energy in learning about racism and how to kind of, be an anti-racist, I'm diverting resources from the animals. And in the short term, it might look like, it would be better to invest that time and energy in learning, I don't know, about animal rights and how to advocate a vegan diet. But in the long run, I believe actually a fair, inclusive, diverse organization will benefit this very, animals we are actually trying to help. So, white vegans need to do the work. And it is an ongoing process, and it is going to make them uncomfortable. I think actually, what Erin said, I totally agree with that. I find actually, first of all, we say we need to call people out on their kind of racist behaviors. They don't like it. But I find even when I actually talk about racism in general terms, so I'm not actually calling out anybody on anything, people feel so uncomfortable and they don't realize that. They shut me down. So I think, it is really the white vegans are the ones who need to do the work, and they need to realize how important it is. It's not enough for me to tell them. So
exactly. Thank you for saying that. It's not for us to tell. You need to recognize this. Dr. Aaron, recognize it and embrace it. Get uncomfortable, and let's bridge the gap. Priyanka.
Yes, as Dr. Layla shared, these are very uncomfortable truths about narratives that are being perpetuated in our movement. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that mainstream veganism and animal rights activists have tended to overlook colonialism and vegans of color by excluding us from dominant discourse. And unfortunately, in doing so, billions of voices are excluded. And so when we talk about solutions, I think it's really important to talk about language. And something I'd really like to point out is that vegan is not an ancient word. It's not derived from any of the classical languages like Latin or Sanskrit. And this tells us that it was an invented word, something that was coined in the 1940s. And where else have we seen examples of inventions and discoveries in colonialism? I mean, Columbus Day is coming up, and we still celebrate the fact that someone discovered America, when in fact, indigenous people have been inhabiting this land for centuries. And Native people did not have to be discovered. They were already there.
Right.
And in the same respect, when we attribute that a certain lifestyle choice was invented, this implies that this way of living didn't exist before. So I would like to set the record straight. The Vegan Society gave veganism a name for something that we have been doing for centuries across Indigenous, Eastern, South American, and African cultures. And I would like to encourage all of our viewers and everyone to do a simple search and see what you discover about the dominant narratives within our movement. And if we look deeper into these narratives, we can rewrite this story and give credit where it's due.
Thank you for that. And I'm glad you talked about the birth of the word vegan, because it did come out of vegetarianism, and pure vegetarianism is still a thing. So don't bash the word vegetarian, you know, all this may eat, it's may, you know, the definitions change all the time. Now they're saying vegetarians will eat. No, that's not true. I know some pure vegetarians. Dr. Aaron, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to just piggyback a little bit on what Layla was talking about. You know, I think we have to, as the white audience is who I'm primarily speaking to, needs to really go inward and first recognize their own privilege. That's really the first step. You have to start with
hello.
Yeah, right? You have
they have privilege. Sometimes they're like, I don't have what privilege. Well,
right. You have to go inward, interrogate your own identity, you know, decondition and challenge those beliefs that have been ingrained. And how do we do this? Really, first through continual education. You have to never consider your learning unfinished. I still have so many things to learn myself. But one really important point, do not rely on your Black and brown friends to educate you on this. Do the work on your own. Yes. Look at the work of people like Dana Bowen Matthew, Kathleen Demeron, Isabella Wilkerson. I mean, just do a Google search and you'll find lots and lots of Black authors or brown authors. And this is what I mean. The foundation of our education must be rooted in the voices and perspectives of Black, Indigenous people of color. And so what are some examples, right? Well, I mean, and my point too, after you've done that though, that's really not enough. You still also, reflecting is not enough. You really have to do some anti-racist work and be held accountable. And so what are some examples of this? Get involved, donate your time and services to BIPOC-led racial justice efforts. As a healthcare practitioner, I looked at, well, what are my interests? Yes, lifestyle medicine, health wellness, health equity. So I'm involved in research at the Versa Foundation that assures BIPOC representation in their research. I'm also involved with a group called Health Equity Achieved Through Lifestyle Medicine. But really important, as a white person, I consider myself a guest in these organizations. I listen, follow their leadership. Do not take over. I do not decide, you know, what is needed. They decide what is needed and take the lead. And it's my job to really break the silence on racism, make sure that anti-racism gets on the table and stays on the table in workplaces, social circles, places of worship, other organizations. And another thing is donate a percentage of your income to racial justice organizations led by BIPOC people, such as Vegans for Black Lives Matter or Versa Foundation and organizations like that.
Thank you for that, Dr. Aaron. Buena.
Yeah, when I first got involved in this movement and was giving talks in Black communities, I got cussed out, shunned, different things, because I was doing it the way I was trained, which was coming from a white perspective.
Right.
I had to find my own voice and talk to Black people in a way that made sense. Sharon Eastham, who's making comments saying that, why are you bringing race into this? This is the type of cognitive dissonance. This is why this panel is necessary. It's for people like you who don't get it. So like when I'm done with this, I'm actually going to a food desert to do some food outreach where we're going to be providing organic foods and fresh vegetables, because in certain communities, it's been designed to where there's only certain types of foods in these areas where they can't get organic. Sometimes they can't get organic strawberries. Maybe they have access to strawberries, but not organic, where they don't have access to maybe Miyokos, because sometimes these items are in Whole Foods. And no diss to her, because I love Miyokos. I'm just as an example.
No, that's a good example.
Yeah, you can't get certain vegan brands in certain zip codes because of how things are set up. Also, sometimes in this movement, our voices aren't heard. So, you know, I've had people say, oh, how do I talk you know, I was approached by some Black Lives Matter people when we were doing this. How do I talk? So I help with that. So Sharon, that's why race is involved in this, and that's why it's necessary. And I'm glad you're watching, and I hope you learned something instead of keep making comments saying that we're diluting. We're educating, and you of all people really need to be paying attention.
Right. And that's the lack of compassion that I was talking about, people like that. So I'm not looking at the comments because I need to be engaged. But I'm glad that you pointed that out. I have no time for the nonsense. So talking about white allyship, I really don't know what the true meaning of it is. Dr. Layla, what is the meaning? What is that? What is a white ally?
Before answering that, I want to say something to Sharon because I read the comment.
Let's go in on it.
To say something. I tell you something, you know, if we want a vegan world, you know, if we just focus on the white people and the, you know, it's a very small percentage of the world. And if you want to talk to the rest of the world, and which is like people of color, I actually led a panel discussion earlier, and there were people from Japan, China, Hong Kong, Pakistan, and Morocco. If you want a vegan world, those people need to go vegan. So you need to actually address these, you know, social justice issues. You cannot just ignore race and, you know, skin color, as you call it. It doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry. I have to say that because I think, you know, that's what, yes, a white ally is actually somebody who recognizes why it is important to do this work, right. Why it is important to have this discussion here. I just think, you know, it is really ridiculous that there are still vegans who don't understand that, you know, we need to actually talk about racism. And yes, they need to understand why it is important to have people of color in all the platforms that matter. And they need to understand that, you know, just saying you are against racism is not enough. You need to do the work. And once you have these people of color, you know, on your platforms, listen to them. Right. Don't assume that you know better than them. You know, I think a white ally recognizes all of that. And I'm not saying it is easy. I'm glad I'm not actually white because it would be so difficult, you know, living in a white society and with all these kind of issues and trying to undo that. It is not easy. I acknowledge that, but I think it is necessary. So I think, yes, as a white ally, that is what they need to do, to give us a platform, to give us a voice, and not to be afraid if when we are having a diverse voice, because diversity is not just you know, about the skin color. You know, and some people tell me, oh, you look actually very white. So it's not about the skin color, not just the skin color. It's also about diverse cultures.
Right, exactly.
And I think we need to, you know, acknowledge and appreciate that. And a white ally would actually give a platform to all of that. And yes, and listen to us.
Dr. Layla, I'm glad you said about giving platform because I just do what I want to do, whether whoever comments and likes it or not. And again, I want to shout out Jane Unchained News, who has allowed me to cross post on their platform and talk about these issues because it is needed and it needs to be heard. Priyanka, white allyship, what do they need to be doing? What is it?
Right. Yeah. As Dr. Layla suggested, I really think it's about listening more than you speak, uplifting voices, creating a platform. It's also about being open to other people's perspectives and lived realities. And I think at the crux of it is really remembering that being an ally isn't actually about you or your feelings. It's nothing personal, but it's actually this collective dismantling of this larger system that's being created. And something that I've been working with and reading is Dr. David Camp's book, White Ally Toolkit. And I would recommend that everyone takes a look at it because it promotes empathy, active listening, and storytelling for bridging racial divides. And then I would also encourage everyone to take a look at dominant visuals and vocabulary in our movement. Because we're promoting veganism not just for animals and our planet, but we also need to take a deeper look at promoting veganism for the millions, billions of voices that are left in the margin.
Nice. Thank you for that, Dr. Aaron. What is white ally? What is it?
Well, I don't call myself a white ally because that's not for me to decide, right? That is for Naijha, Priyanka, Layla, Gwenna, and other people of color to determine. You know, what I do is I really just encourage white people to explore their own role in white supremacy, the systems, the institutions, the structures. You have to be willing to look at it and grapple with it. And yes, it's uncomfortable, and stop looking at it like as an individual. You have to look at it as the system. Like, well, I'm not racist. Well, no, you need to look at it as a system that you have benefited from, and do the anti-racist work. You know, understand what white privilege means, do the internal work, and hold yourself accountable and others in your circles of influence accountable.
Thank you for that. Gwenna, white allies. What is it?
Well, first of all, it's a lifetime worth of work. It's not reading a book and watching a documentary and you're like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay. And then you go on to your life. You don't stop because you've been programmed in the womb. So it's not going to just take a few books and a few movies to deprogram. It's a lifetime worth of work. It's continually evolving and, you know, learning and seeing, you know, you're part of this planet. So it's not something you just do one time and then you stop. You continue to do the work because it's going to take a few lifetimes to reverse all of this and to get things back on balance. So yeah, just don't stop doing the work. I understand it can be taxing because I've had to take a break from the work I thought I was going to be doing. It was like just too much on me mentally and emotionally. So I know I've had some white friends say this, I don't know how I didn't know. I don't know how you all have been functioning in this. So if you got to take a break, but get back into it.
Thank you for that, Gwenna. I mean, for me, the white ally, you know, if I need something, funds donated to Black Veg Society, you know, that helps. Don't judge me. Don't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing, my culture. I've been doing this for a long time. Land of Kush, the vegan restaurant's been open over 10 years. We must be doing something right. And we've created and co-created events. Just be there to support me and don't judge me and don't judge the actions. And that's all these different words and whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. It's about what you do. It's about the action. Anything else we want to talk about? I think this was really good. I think people really need to hear this. We have a long way to go. Like Gwenna says, everyone's not going to like this. Some people don't want it. There's still the separatist mentality. And we're going to be in the minority as vegans until we realize that we have some inner work to do. So we're trying to get to that global majority and trying to get more people vegan. We need to be a little bit more compassionate. Be for the animals, yes. Be for the environment. Be for global hunger. Be for health. But collectively, it's going to take that in order to move the agenda forward. I appreciate everyone. If you have anything else to add before we go, please do so now. How can folks follow you, Dr. Layla?
I have my own website, drleilad.com. And I actually created a video project addressing, you know, kind of racism and health equity. And it was just all vegans of color, you know, vegans of athletes, basically, and some vegans of health professionals of color. So that you can find that on my website.
Awesome. Priyanka, where can we follow you?
Absolutely. At JIVINITI on Instagram. And theversafoundation.org, and just check us out on Instagram.
Awesome. Dr. Erin, where can we follow you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm at Thrive Plant Life on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I'm part of JIVINITI also.
Awesome. Gwenna, where can we follow you?
You can find me on LA Health Save and also Gwenna number 1.
All right. And me, Naijha Speaks. You can follow me at Naijha Speaks. Also NaijhaSpeaks.com. And just tune into the latest discussions, whether it's panel or interviews with activists, advocates, what have you. I appreciate you all for joining the panel. It's great, a great discussion. And let's go out and do this work. Bridge the gap, y'all. Bridge the gap.
Thank you so much.
Have a great one. Thank you, Global Veg Fest.